Well, welcome, comrades, to the pre-TUC rally of the National Shop Stewards Network. My name's Janice Godrich and I'm the President of PCS. Colleagues, this rally has now become a regular feature of the TUC, and that's right, that it should be. The National Shop Stewards Network has played a tremendous role over the past number of years, bringing together activists from across our movement, supporting workers' struggles up and down the country, publicising disputes that sometimes we know are difficult to get the mainstream press coverage, not just supporting and publicising, but doing constantly, holding rallies and lobbies, speaking out for the rank and file, and fundamentally articulating the basic trade union principles of solidarity, struggle and socialism. And I'm proud to be associated with the NSSN, and my union works closely with such, and that my union works closely with such an organisation. Colleagues, I just want to briefly pay tribute to Rob Williams, the National Shop Stewards Secretary. His untiring work and commitment, I think, is an inspiration to us all. A few years ago, he told me that he'd never go on Facebook. He eventually went on and fills my news feed constantly. The man's on so many picket lines that I think he is that person who can be in two places at the same time, sometimes at different ends of the country. So congratulations, Rob, on the work you do. It's very, very inspiring. Colleagues, I want to keep my remarks short as we've got so many great speakers today, and I know that probably the majority of people in this room are delegates to the TUC and will need to get in there for the start of Congress. And I'm really pleased that you've got the opportunity here to hear from many leaders of the trade union movement, fantastic leaders that are fighting on behalf of their members along with the members and reps in their union. But we'll just make a couple of short points. Since we last met in Brighton for the last TUC, there's been a UK general election, and we'll hear hopefully later from one of our strongest allies in Parliament, John McDonald, the Shadow Chancellor. But I think it's clear that despite all the doom and gloom predictions, that if that general election had gone on for another 2 weeks, it's more than likely that John McDonnell wouldn't have been the Shadow Chancellor and that Jeremy Corbyn would have been the Prime Minister, because they, along with the manifesto that they launched, gave something that thousands and millions of people have been missing for decades, and that is the hope and belief that things can get better. And I look forward to hearing from him later. But let's be clear, the easiest and the most sure way to get rid of May and her gang is our movement, the trade union movement, which is the biggest democratic force in society, and it addresses and fights against the many grievances of our members, our families and our communities. We need to send a simple message to the Tories: no more cuts, no more privatisation, no more austerity.
Oh. Austerity.
The public sector pay cap must be challenged and defeated, and we'll see that being a prime theme that runs through this conference. By sticking together and galvanising the full strength of our movement in joint coordinating campaigns and, if necessary, industrial action, we can win fair above inflation settlements for all public sector workers, and in the process for those in the private sector too. And importantly, we can't allow this government to divide us by offering minor concessions to what they will portray as deserving public sector workers while maintaining the cap for their so-called undeserving public sector workers. Colleagues, the last time I chaired an NSS rally was in 2010, just before the pensions dispute. Now, that dispute demonstrated the potential strength of our movement, with between 2 to 3 million workers on strike. By abandoning that dispute and accepting a deal on the government's offer, great damage was done, including giving a green light to the worst excesses of austerity. We must learn from that and never repeat that experience. So let's recommit ourselves today to building the maximum unity in our movement, in the public, in the private sector, and begin the process of winning back what has been stolen from us over the last few years. Solidarity. Colleagues, it gives me great pleasure that the first speaker to address the NSS conference is someone who knows only too well the brutality of this government in terms of its actions against his members. Steve Gillen, General Secretary of the POA.
Thank you very much, Janice, and thank you, Rob. It's a pleasure to be part of the National Shop Stewards Network, and my union play a leading role in that with other trade unions in respect of it. Before I talk about smashing the pay cap, I just want to bring everyone up to speed with what's been happening to my trade union. And it's had absolutely nothing to do with pay. It's about safety, the health and safety of staff and the health and safety of those in our charge, prisoners. When we took action on the 15th of November last year, I think it brought into the public domain what was actually happening within our prisons. The scandalous suicides that are record levels, the scandalous assaults, prisoner on prisoner, record levels, riots now and occurrence disturbances on a weekly and monthly basis. We're seeing more and more prisoners taken to hospital as a result of new psychoactive substances, but we're also seeing members of staff in record numbers as well being taken to hospital suffering the effects of new psychoactive substances because not enough is known about that contraband that individuals are taking in prisons. It causes absolute misery, not just for prisoners, but for staff as well. So why did the government then take us into court for an injunction? I think because they feared this union getting the truth out about what's happening in our prisons. Nothing more, nothing less. They've been doing it since 1994 under the Criminal Justice and Public Order Act, which makes it a criminal offence for a prison officer to induce another prison officer. But let me tell you why they've done it on this occasion. Because we asked our members not to volunteer for voluntary duties. Anybody would have thought that was okay, but no, they ran us into court saying that we were inducing our members under Section 127 of the Criminal Justice and Public Order Act, a draconian legislation that needs to be repealed 100%, because on the back of that, they've now got a permanent injunction, even although the judge said that voluntary work was not contractual. He found against us because we induced our members. Well, that's what a trade union is there to do, actually, to advise our members in a legitimate way as to put pressure on the employer. Otherwise, it merely becomes collective begging instead of collective bargaining. Now, the reality is for us, we will abide by that legislation which forbids us to induce whilst it's there, but we will rely on another legislation which is absolutely quite clear, because you know us, the POA, we like to abide by the law. So the reality is we will abide by Section 44 of the Employment Rights Act of 1996, which says that individuals have a right to leave their workplace in serious and imminent danger. Now the reality is we will deal with those issues pertaining. But I want to touch on pay to smash the pay cap. And it's not just about smashing the pay cap for public sector workers. Private sector workers have been treated just as bad, and it's a race to the bottom. What we've got to do is make sure that everybody, whether it's private sector, public sector, are getting beyond inflation-proof pay rises. It's ironic that we gather again here today just before Congress starts. For 7 years, we have now been suffering either a pay freeze in the public sector or pay caps. It's about time that we collectively stood together. And it's no use just having rallies. It's no use just having rallies and demonstrations to say how awful it is. And I'm hoping that after Congress, and once we have seen those composite motions go through, which they should go through unanimously, that we build a massive campaign, including coordinated action if necessary. And my union have already said, because there's sections of our union that can take legitimate action, and we are ready to ballot those individuals, which will bring prisons to a standstill if indeed it will be through an indicative ballot first. But the reality is we've got to test the new Trade Union Act to see if we can get over thresholds for those members that can still take action. But we will not in any way, shape or form be silenced by anti-trade union legislation. We've not been silenced since 1994, and we will not be silenced going forward. The reality is, and I've said it time and time again, any branch in our country that takes legitimate action under health and safety legislation, I, as General Secretary, will never repudiate that action. I'm not going to stand here and give bravado and say that I'm prepared to go to jail and so forth. They will put that on a penal notice when they get their injunctions and so forth. But the reality is, what they will try and do to our union if we're found guilty of contempt of court is fine us, continually fine us, and then sequestrate our funds. That's the reality. They're not going to martyr any individual such as me or on our national executive. So the reality is I'm not going to beat the drum and say I'm prepared to go to jail, because that is absolute nonsense. It's not going to happen. But the reality is what they will try and do, they'll come for our money and so forth. Well, they can take our money, but the reality is we will rise again, because they can only take it once, and we will build from the ashes and rise again. That's the reality. But I've been saying it time and time again. No one single trade union will be able to take this government on and win. This government are weak, make no mistake about it. And what we need to do now is make sure that the trade union movement are strong and focused, coordinated and together. And together, and only together, can we win this battle. Thank you, colleagues. With many issues.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Steve. Before I ask Rob to speak, I'd just like the following people, and sorry if this embarrasses you, but to stand up, and that is Len from Barts, Zim from BA, and Louis from McDonald. So can you stand up? And when the lights went out, when they came on, there was the Birmingham Bin men in here. So, hey! Of all those groups of workers during the rally. But I'm now going to ask Rob Williams, the National Chair of the NSN, to address the meeting.
Thanks, Janice. What a meeting. God help the TUC Congress. Comrades, can I just say, first of all, this is really our first event of the year, in a sense. We didn't go ahead with our national conference in July, but because a week or two before it, the People's Assembly called a demonstration, a Tories out demonstration, in the aftermath of the general election, and we thought it was the right thing to do to cancel that conference so that we could do our bit to build a united demonstration against the Tories. because we all want the Tories out. That's what it's all about. Now, as Janice said, I get to the odd picket line and protest. Well, this week started with the magnificent and historic Bakers Union McDonald strike. On Thursday, I was up in Birmingham on the bin worker strike from Unite. And on Wednesday, I heard a trade union leader say in Parliament that if the Tory government doesn't give us a pay rise, we'll ballot to strike. Well, it wasn't Len, or Sean, or Mick Cash, it wasn't Mark Serwotka, it wasn't perhaps the usual suspects. It was one of the leaders of the Royal College of Nurses. Now, not usually a union, in fact, a union probably portrayed as a union that doesn't strike for nurses. But when I looked round Parliament Square that day, and I saw the hundreds, if not thousands of nurses angry, I thought something's changed. This has been the story of the summer. And we've tried to reflect that, as Janice said, in this rally, with reps from the prominent disputes that have taken place. I'm sure Sean will say a few words about the disputes, about the driver-only operations that are increasing around the country. And Mark, if he's got chance, might mention the job centre closures that his members are taking action on and other disputes. But really what we are seeing is a revolt against the cut in living standards by the Tories and the employers. Much of it in the private sector. Many of them, not all, but many of them on the lowest pay. The mixed fleet workers, the Barts Trust workers working for Serco, the Mias, Argos, the canteen staff in Fawley, in Hampshire, and of course the workers in McDonald's. And I will stress, we're doing a collection today, it's to pay for the room. But see those workers and make sure that you make collections to their disputes as well. And I'm sure the outcome of the election has given workers a boost of confidence. Do you remember Theresa May said to Jeremy, there's no magic money tree. Well, they found £1 billion, didn't they, to do a dodgy deal with the DUP. Where's the magic money tree for the nurses, for the teachers, for the civil servants, the local government workers, the lecturers, and so on? And therefore, can I say what a pleasure it is to have John McDonnell speaking at today's rally. John was caught in traffic last year because he was going to speak at the rally last year, but I'm delighted he's here today because him and Jeremy Corbyn, they don't stand on picket lines because it's a publicity stunt, or they've found out that it's quite popular. It's in their DNA. They've been doing it for years and doing it for decades, but it does make a difference. You ask the BA workers, you ask the McDonald's workers as well. When John, now as Shadow Chancellor, can stand on a picket line, then it gives you confidence. Many of these workers are fresh, young workers. Many of them are migrant workers. And that makes a difference. Now, the NSSN isn't a party political organisation. We're a rank-and-file network of union activists that have an important link with some of the most militant unions in this country, initiated by the late, the great Bob Crow 11 years ago. But we aren't neutral when a decisive political battle is being waged and the interests of workers is on the line. That's why last year we wanted to give John a platform at this rally, because he was being challenged, unfortunately, in his own party, and Jeremy as well. That's why we unapologetically called for a vote for Jeremy and his workers' charter in the general election. But as friends and comrades, we have to warn as well. And I will warn that the actions of the Labour Council in Birmingham is threatening the reputation that you were striving to build at the party as an anti-austerity force. I'm sorry to say they are more like Willie Walsh than Jeremy Corbyn, the way that they have acted. But the bin workers know that you are different. They want and need your support to stop the attacks on them at this stage. I saw the pictures and the videos of the Bristol demonstration yesterday, and that is a positive step. But I tell you, the way to link workers together in the councils, to link with the communities, is for the council to say we're not going to make any more cuts when we have a government that doesn't have the authority to make them anymore. John, your manifesto last year in June, or this year in June rather, was a game changer. You have put nationalisation back on the agenda. We're going to have a speaker here, Terry Pullinger from the CWU. Isn't it good to know we have leaders, Labour leaders, who want to put Royal Mail back into public ownership? They want to put the rails back into public ownership and further like that. And we all support the CWU in their dispute of 100,000 workers in Royal Mail when that ballot starts this week. But also that manifesto included workers' rights. £10 an hour, abolishing zero-hour contracts, collective bargaining, repealing the Trade Union Act, and I think, crucially, the promise to abolish student tuition fees that led to a youthquake of young people that voted for Labour in this election. That election result has weakened and divided the Tories, but it would be the biggest mistake for us in the trade unions to imagine that the Tories are just going to collapse and a Corbyn government will fall into our laps. Or even that we should just wait for May and Hammond to relax the pay cap. They will try and divide public sector workers into the deserving and the undeserving. Well, all workers deserve a pay rise above the real inflation rate of 3.6%. And not only that, but fresh funding, not to pay for a pay rise with people losing their jobs and stretched as they are now. It is necessary for people to get back what has been lost over the last 7 years, the 20% of income that has been lost. This TUC Congress must be a council of war to fight to smash the pay cap from new funding, as I said, not the job cuts. There are motions on the agenda. There is a composite that I have no doubt is going to be passed, calling for a national demonstration, calling for coordinating of strike ballots. The question is, how do we put that into action when we come back from Brighton on Wednesday? There may be some who will argue that because of the Trade Union Act we can't get the voting thresholds and we can't take national action. The undemocratic voting thresholds by a government that couldn't even win a majority on June the 8th as well. But the only answer to that is to build a real campaign, a serious campaign that can do the job, that can build enthusiasm and confidence. And surely the summer strikes have shown us something, that if the public sector workers take action in the next few months to call demonstrations, to take strike action, then they will be supported by all workers across and they will inspire them as well. We welcome all initiatives that the trade unions are prepared to take, and we will be on them and build support for them. But I'll be honest, a lobby of Parliament on a lunchtime in October is not sufficient. We need a Saturday demonstration called by the TUC and the trade unions in their name, I'm sure supported by John and Jeremy. It would be a massive demonstration. It would compare with the 750,000 that marched in March 2011. That mobilisation proved to be the starting point of a struggle to defend public sector pensions that led to the massive 2 million strong N30 strike at the end of that year. As Janice said, that struggle finished too early, and that can't be allowed to happen again. But the TUC Congress that year did leave to coordinated strike ballots, and why not now? I believe we can build a movement that could win massive majorities for action and with the necessary turnout. But if they fell slightly short on the turnout, we would give workers the confidence to challenge those undemocratic anti-union laws as well. I'm old enough to remember in 1988 when 40 nurses walked out in Manchester because of the crisis in the NHS and led to a mass movement against the health service under Thatcher. Comrades, I'll finish on this. We thought you had a victory in Birmingham. We're going to do all we can to make sure you do get a victory. But the victory by the Glasgow janitors in the last couple of weeks, after a year and a half long campaign, the victory by Unite members in the Bank of England over the last few days shows the victory can be won and what is possible. But a mass struggle by the union movement over the next weeks and months on the issue of pay, which could be a lightning rod for all the grievances faced by workers of the catastrophe of Tory austerity, that could build a mass movement that can take on the Tories, defeat them, and we could have John McDonnell as the real Chancellor and Jeremy Corbyn as Prime Minister on an anti-austerity programme. That's worth fighting for. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Now I'd like to invite Len McCluskey, colleagues, we haven't only had a general election this year, but Unite had an important election as well, and that was for their General Secretary. And I'm sure everyone in this room sends our congratulations to Len on being re-elected as the leader of the largest union in the UK. Well done, Len. Now, Unite, though, have been a bit of a bee recently. They've had the BA, they've had the bin workers, they've had Barts, and they've had the Bank of England. So, but it's a nice bee. And Len, I'm sure you're going to tell us all about it. I invite you to address us.
Well, thank you, Janice, and good afternoon, sisters and brothers, comrades and friends. I'm absolutely delighted to be here, primarily to do one thing, and that is to thank you. To thank you for the work that you do, day in, day out, representing our members. Our shop stewards movement, throughout our movement, is absolutely critical to making certain that the voice of ordinary working people is properly heard. You know, general secretaries come and go. Our members in Unite might read about me sometimes in the newspapers. Hopefully they don't believe everything they read. But the truth of the matter is, to Unite members and to members in every single other union, it is our shop stewards who is the face of the union. It's you who deal with their problems day in, day out. It's you that are there to see their concerns and to fight for decent wages and conditions. And I want to thank you. I want to thank you for the work you do selflessly and without any remuneration. It's precisely why, of course, the Taxpayers Alliance, that horrible right-wing group, and the Tories and the Tory press have launched their campaign on facility time to attack shop stewards. They know what I know, that if they try to destroy our shop stewards movement, then they will take away the very heartbeat of our movement. And that's why in Unite, we've made it clear that we will always stand shoulder to shoulder with our shop stewards. Janice, I also wanted to thank an old friend of mine, Peter Toth, who's dedicated his whole life fighting for ordinary working people. And I want to thank you for that, Peter, because you've made a difference. And making a difference is what we are all about. The most important thing, the most important word that I've come across in the 40-odd years that I've been representing working people is confidence. If working people have confidence, anything is possible. My experience tells me that. I've been on strike myself many times personally, and I've led strikes. And the reality is that when workers are strong and confident, then they normally achieve what they want. That's why in Unite we set up a massive strike fund. I think the largest in the trade union movement, currently standing at £36 million, because we wanted to send out two messages. Firstly, to our members to say that we're not going to allow the bosses to starve you back to work. And secondly, to send a message to employers to tell them that if they think they're going to starve our members back to work, then they best think again. Comrades, over the last over the last 3 years, Unite has had over 1,000 industrial action ballots, and every single one of them has resulted in a victory for our members. And that's why I'm confident that my members who are fighting in Birmingham in the refuse dispute will achieve justice and victory. You know, I have to laugh. I have to laugh at some Labour councillors who don't have any backbone and are not prepared to stand up to the officers. We've got a chief executive in Birmingham who want to reduce our members' pay by £5,000 a year, £100 a week to people who are only on £19,000, £20,000. How despicable is that? Coming from a chief executive who could easily lose £5,000 a week without even noticing it. And yet we've got Labour leaders who jump to their tune. Fortunately for us, and Robbie, he's probably stolen most of the speeches of most of the General Secretaries. Fortunately for us, we have a leader in Jeremy Corbyn and John McDonald, who for the first time in over 40 years have actually challenged the economic orthodoxy of neoliberalism. A fantastic job. All of the right-wing media and the traitors within our midst who said that the British electorate are not interested in radical policies, well, how wrong they were. John and Jeremy out on the stump speaking to tens of thousands of people who wanted to hear that another alternative is possible, that a better Britain is possible, that a better world is possible. And that's why we must fight ourselves to make certain that Jeremy and John and their team are put in power, as Robbie has said. You know, a number of strikes have been mentioned. The Bank of England staff, successful. The Mixed Fleet staff will be successful. And of course, the Serco workers, I think we're going to hear from the stewards there in St. Barts. The three of those workers joined together in London just recently to form Unite London on each other's pickets, on each other's demonstrations, lobbying in the various areas, showing what can happen when working people do link together. That's why I agree with Steve when he said that we need to try to encourage the TUC to be a little less timid in what they do. The truth of the matter is that there is a mood out there. Wherever I go, John and I spoke at the Burston school strike in Norfolk, 100th centenary. If you don't know about it, read about it. Fantastic strike. The biggest demonstration they'd ever had, with young people flocking. Everywhere I go, young people enthused by Jeremy Corbyn and by what is possible. That mood is something that we have to tap into. I want to say to Ronnie Draper and to the bakers, how proud I am with the courage that you are now engaging to take on McDonald's strike. What a fantastic strike that is. And Ronnie, anything we can do to help and assist financially or anything else, I pledge that here and now. And I wish you great success on what will be a tough and difficult strike. But I'm so, so proud when I look at those young workers, predominantly young workers, being prepared to stand and fight. You know, comrades, that's what actually keeps me going. People sometimes say to me after meetings of this nature, oh, Lenny, that was a great speech, you know, inspiring. The truth is, you inspire me. It's people like you who go out and battle and fight every day of your lives that gives me the inspiration to do everything I can. Unite is proud to be a fighting back union, to be a union that is afraid of no one and will stand shoulder to shoulder with any workers in struggle. That's why we took the issue out of our rule book about always acting inside the law. We took that out because we know that if the bosses and the privileged elite want to push us outside the law, so be it. It won't stop us standing and fighting for our members. So I say, thank you, Robbie. Thank you, Robbie, for the National Shop Stewards Network. Thank you for the work you do. Believe in our values, because it's within our grasp to create a better world for our class and for our people. Thanks a lot.
Thanks very much, Len. I look forward to you addressing the Congress later on in the week. Colleagues, our next speaker is someone who we hope to see in a more formal capacity at some point in the future, and that is John McDonnell, the Shadow Labour Shadow Chancellor. Colleagues, my union's had a long history of association with John. He was the chair of our parliamentary group for a number of years, and with the fantastic political developments within the Labour Party that resulted in Jeremy's election and John's appointment, I know many of us have been around for a number of years, and it seems like such a fantastic achievement. I used to wonder sometimes whether I was sort of in some sort of dream and I'd wake up and Ed Miliband would get out the shower and come back to lead the party. But it's a fantastic opportunity to welcome you, John, and invite you to address the meeting. Thank you.
Thanks. Let's deal with some immediate issues. I just say to the Birmingham Binmen, I do not see your strike as a strike against Labour. I see your strike as a strike against austerity. Simple as that. And I just say this. Our advice to Labour councillors wherever, when they go into dispute, is to get round the table and insist on the fact that it isn't chief executives or officers of the council that determine the future of a council's policies, but the councillors themselves. So we want negotiations to resolve this dispute immediately. Solidarity. It's been referenced to the different disputes. I've been on various picket lines over the last, well, for most of my life, but over the recent period. And I just want to make reference to them as well, because I'm really proud. The role of a Labour MP, we now reassert, isn't just in Parliament, it's to be with people on the picket line as well when necessary, because we are the Labour and trade union movement. And for a period, some people forgot it within our movement. We reassert that principle. So I was proud to be on the picket line with BA cabin crew in my constituency. I have to say, it was probably the most attractive and beautiful picket line I've ever been on. I meet the Governor of the Bank of England every month. And last month he said to me, well, I'll see you again in a month's time. And I said, well, actually, no, you'll see me sooner than that, because I'll be on the picket line outside. And I'm pleased that they've settled with a reasonable settlement. But they didn't just settle for this year, they're now into negotiations for next year. So if necessary, we'll be back again. And I'm so proud of what happened as well in McDonald's. Only 2 years ago, I went along to the Bakers Union executive and I said, would you be interested, because you represent workers in Greggs and on the high street, would you be willing to look at a fast food campaign? And to a person on that executive, unanimously, they decided to start launching a fast food campaign. And that's hard work, because you're recruiting and you're mobilising some of those vulnerable workers within our economy. But after this length of period and hard work, the demonstrations that have taken place, the recruitment, that strike last week, that strike on Monday was fundamental. And I'm so proud of the young people that came out in that dispute. The way in which they argued the case, they presented themselves. I wasn't over keen on being described as Big Mac, though, I have to say. Can I also say as well, with Some of you know this story with Steve and the POA some years ago, because I helped set up the POA, the Justice Unions Group. I remember when they first came out, and the phone call came in to me that we're coming out, and I had to advise a Labour Home Secretary's office that they were coming out on strike. And you know this story, some of you. The response I got was, well, it's illegal. I said, well, who's going to lock them up? And I say to Steve, when we go back into power, we will restore the trade union rights to the POA. And I was on the Barts picket line in demonstration as well. Some of the lowest paid workers in our capital city. And I was on, I don't know whether you saw it, I was on Andrew Marr the following week. And they were having Philip Hammond on as well. He won't go on the sofa with me with Andrew Marr. I don't know whether he thinks I'm going to bite him or what. I don't know. But I said to Andrew Marr, I've got a wage slip from one of the Barts workers. Give it to Philip Hammond and ask him if he can live on these wages. Because these are multi-millionaires in the Tory front benches we're dealing with, who have no idea what it's like for some of our members to choose between heating or eating, or whether they will eat or their children will eat, or like our nurses having to turn up at food banks just to survive. That's the brutality of Tory austerity after 7 years. That's why in our manifesto we made it clear. We will scrap the pay cap, and it is paid for how? By having a fair taxation system where the corporations and the rich pay their way through their taxes. And that's why we also said, yes, we'll have a real living wage, £10 an hour when Labour's elected. And the reason we said that is because they want to try and make it normal in our society that we have to fend off food banks. They want to make it normal in our society that people have no hours guaranteed within their contracts. We reject that normality. But there's no good just introducing a real living wage and scrapping the pay cap once. The only way that living standards will be protected, you know as well as I do, is if you join a trade union and we have trade union rights. That's why we've said very clearly, within the first 100 days of a Labour government, we will scrap the Trade Union Act that the Tories introduced. We will restore trade union rights, and we're not asking for the earth. We simply want the trade union rights that apply across the rest of Europe. Simply governments to abide by the law, the International Labour Organization Conventions on Employment Rights. It's not much to ask. Now, we expect in this coming budget, there's all sorts of different hints, that Philip Hammond will bring forward a budget that somehow, mythologically, will abolish the pay cap. But the proposals that will come forward will be selective. Pay rises for some and not for others. Let me make it clear. We want the pay cap scrapped for everybody. Right, we will not be divided and ruled again. But the Tories also know there's anger building up right the way across. These disputes have come as a result of people saying we've had enough. We're not taking it anymore. Now, I think at this week's TUC, that's the message that will come out loud and clear. And let me make it absolutely clear. You have the democratic right to ballot for industrial action. And if as a result of those ballots, you support industrial action, I tell you this, on every case we've seen so far, it's been just, and therefore, yes, we'll be in Parliament supporting you, but we'll be on the picket line supporting you as well. Because we cannot tolerate a society with such grotesque inequalities of wealth and income. We cannot tolerate a society which is a food bank Britain. We cannot tolerate a society where now, after generations, for the first time in generations, more of our national growth, our national income, is going to speculators and investors than it is to the people who create the wealth in our country. It's that grotesque unfairness that we challenge and that you will be challenging. There's no need for strikes if the government itself scraps the pay cap and introduces a pay strategy that enables people to have a real living wage and a decent quality of living. But if you determine to take that action, we know your cause is just, you will have our support. And if you decide that, yes, you will take that action democratically together, you will have our support. Because this struggle now is basically about whether or not they push more and more working class people into low wages, poverty, debt and insecurity. Our manifesto said we want a Britain for the many, not the few. That's what your campaigns will be about. A society for the many, not the few, in which we have decent wages, respect for trade union rights, and as a result of that, a quality of life that's been denied us under austerity for the last 7 years. Determination, courage, above all else, solidarity. I'm proud to be associated with this movement and this forthcoming struggle. Solidarity.
Thanks very much, John, and I'm sure that everyone in this room sends back to you and Jeremy all our best wishes, solidarity and support for the struggles that you'll undoubtedly have over the next period, and look forward to that continued association. Colleagues, we are trying to be tight with the speakers, so I want to make sure that we get everyone in who we want to bring in. After our next speaker, we're going to hear from Sean Hoyle, the RMT President, and then it'll be my great pleasure to invite the Birmingham bin workers to address the meeting. But our next speaker is someone who's well known to our movement, well known to Congress, and in my opinion is one of the most outstanding trade union leaders of his generation. But I would say that because he's the General Secretary of my union, the PCS. So welcome, Mark, and invite him to address the meeting.
Well, thanks very much, Janice, and solidarity from PCS. Fully support the NSSN, and just delighted not only to hear some fantastic speeches already today, but also on behalf of our union, can we pledge our full support to the Barts strikers, the McDonald strikers, the Birmingham refuge staff, and everybody else in dispute, because our union recognises when workers are on strike, our job is to support the workers every single time, and we pledge to give you whatever support we can. Now, comrades, this time last year I was due to address this rally, but I was rushed into Papworth Hospital, and people will know that after 4 months in hospital I had a successful heart transplant at the end of the year. I'm happy to say I hope that means my 7 years of ill health is now behind me. But the reality is I stand here today after 3 life-saving operations, only here because of the fantastic staff that make up our National Health Service. So I think that whenever we talk about workers standing together and supporting pay struggles and every other struggle, we should also rededicate ourselves to say that we want to support our NHS, to stop all privatisation of the NHS, and to support all health workers in their just claims against this vicious government. But I also wanted to say something else. There's been a lot of talk and a lot of debate about freedom of movement and about immigration and a real racist narrative from the right wing in this country over the last 3 or 4 years. And I want to make this point. The surgeon who did my heart transplant was from Switzerland. The surgeon who did my previous life-saving operation was from China. My cardiologist was Indian. My junior doctor was from Croatia. The nurses who brought me back from intensive care were from Africa, from the Philippines, from Spain, from across the European Union. So when people say that this country's full up, I'm proud to say on behalf of my union, migrants and refugees should always be welcome here, and we should stand up for them at every conceivable opportunity. Now, comrades, as I lay in my hospital bed before the general election for week after week, I, of course, wanted to think about the type of world I wanted to come out back into, the type of victories, the type of developments that I would like to have seen. Of course, I couldn't have imagined that Theresa May would lose her majority. I couldn't have imagined that the workers would start going on the front foot and striking back. But I have to say, my #1 dream has been fulfilled. The Cardiff City sit on top of the championship, racing towards their promotions coming next year. That I know, Rob, you'll be more than happy to support me. Now, this is what I really wanted to get across. That there's been a lot of talks about supporting strikes, but on behalf of PCS, I want to talk about the national coordinated strike action that we want to see to defeat the pay cap, and why on behalf of my union, we hope that all public sector unions will join us and ballot all of our members to ask them about strike action in the run-up to this year's budget to maximise the pressure on the Tory government. Now, PCS has already decided to do this. We are balloting from the 9th of October to the 6th of November every single public sector worker in our union, and we're asking them 2 questions. One, whether they think the pay cap should be scrapped, and secondly, if it's not, are they prepared to take strike action? Now, there's an awful lot of talk around, you know, that the anti-union laws means that nobody can win these ballots. And of course, the 50% threshold may be tough to meet. But what we're doing is not sitting back and saying it's impossible. We are having a consultative ballot where we will look at the information, where we will see whether we have beat the threshold before we launch a full legal ballot, and where we think work needs to be done, we'll put the resources in to ensure we can do it. And what it's evidence of is the anti-union laws should not stop active and militant trade unionism. It means that we have to adjust our tactics to what happens at any given time. And just imagine if it wasn't just PCS, but it was the education unions, the local government unions, and the health unions all announcing we will have similar ballots in the run-up to the budget. It will put more pressure on Theresa May and Philip Hammond than any other event that will take place in the next few weeks. So our plea to everyone is to speak in the debate tomorrow afternoon, to carry the composite that I have no doubt will be carried unanimously, but to remember that in the last 5 years, we have seconded composites not dissimilar to this one that are all carried unanimously and have never, ever led to coordinated industrial action. So what we have to say this time is it has to be different. We have to say the time is now. The time is not just for words and resolutions, but the time has come for action. So I hope everyone will come to the PCS Fringe meeting, which is on Tuesday lunchtime, designed to be after the pay debate, where we want a real discussion with activists and union leaders from across the public sector about how to turn the resolution we will carry on Monday into action that means the Tories are under the maximum pressure. And our view is that we can do it. And our view is we have to do it. Because if we don't, there are some huge dangers facing our movement. And the dangers are not whether the Tories will make concessions. It's quite clear. The Tories will make concessions in the budget. They're already trailing the divisive stance they will take by separating one public sector worker from another. And Janice has got it nailed on, and our union is quite clear. Every public sector worker deserves a pay rise. And yes, nurses and doctors deserve a pay rise, but so do the porters and the cleaners and the ancillary staff in the NHS. Right? Our teachers deserve a pay rise, but so do the teaching assistants and the caretakers and all education workers. And so do the job centre workers and the tax collectors. And so do those people who keep our councils running, who empty the bins, who keep our social services going. There should be no deserving and undeserving public sector workers. Each and every one of us deserves a pay rise. So our slogan is simply this: scrap the cap, take that away for everybody, and very importantly, force the government to put the funding into public services that allows us to negotiate pay rises that are above the rate of inflation. Because, comrades, it will be a Pyrrhic victory if Theresa May scraps the pay cap and doesn't put a penny into our public services, because what we'll be faced with is employers saying, if you want a pay rise, you have to trade in jobs and find efficiencies. Well, our union's message is this: there should be no trading of jobs. There should be no more job cuts and redundancies. There should be more jobs in the public sector. And yes, there should be a minimum of a 5% pay rise across the board for everybody, wherever they work. And we are determined to try and achieve it. And comrades, I'll leave you with this thought. Not only can we get our members to vote and put pressure on the government, not only would winning on pay actually be a decisive blow for workers in Britain that will spill over into other disputes right across the economy, but it'll have another effect. We all know the government is weak. We all know that Theresa May is clinging on with the DUP. We all know in Parliament there are not the votes currently to bring her down. But I tell you this, nothing would act as an agent to bring this government down more than effective parliamentary opposition led by Corbyn and McDonnell, and millions of people on strike to break the pay cap, because if we break the pay cap, we can break the government, and then we can attack all the other inequalities that John and Len and all of our other speakers have talked about. So my closing message is this: now's the time to be bold. Now's the time not to think that we're going through the routines of the past. It is to say we are serious. Serious about winning in St. Barts, in McDonald's, in Birmingham. Serious about winning in DWP Sheffield, where our members have been on strike for 4 weeks to keep a job centre open, not because they will get more jobs or pay, because they care about the public they serve in the poorest part of Sheffield. We can win those disputes, and we can win on pay, and we can begin to transform this country with the election of a Corbyn government with a rejuvenated trade union movement. That's the message from my union. That's what we want to share with delegates this week. Solidarity from PCS, victory on the pay cap and to all of the disputes, and let's get rid of this disgraceful government and have a left-wing progressive government that can transform people's lives. Solidarity from PCS.
Thanks very much, Mark, and I know I speak on behalf of the whole movement. Incredibly pleased to see you back fighting and fit again, and I know that PCS will be seconding, or you'll be seconding, the main composite on public sector pay at the Congress later this week, and I'm sure there'll be delegates and observers there who'll be glad to see you back making that type of contribution on the Congress floor. So thank you very much. Colleagues, the RMT, well, what can you say about them? They're always up for a fight, and they win a lot of them. Sean, come on, tell us all about it. This is Sean Hall, who's the president of the RMT. Sean.
Thanks, Janice, and thanks for getting the steps put there before I come up, because most of you could tell I've only got little legs. Actually, Rob, I want to say thank you to you, first of all, because earlier you mentioned 11 years ago, my late, great General Secretary, Bob Crow, come up with the idea of forming what became the NSSN, and you've done tireless work to support our movement and to ensure we still have progressive, militant trade unionism in this country. So thank you for all you do. Now, I'm going to say a little bit about what we've been doing lately. Most of you probably realise we've had our members in Southern, for instance, and if you look over at Ted over there with the T-shirt, well done, Ted. Our members on Southern have been out on strike for 18 months. And why? Purely for the safety of the travelling public, purely for accessibility of the travelling public. We have got a situation at the moment where the government, and I mean the government, through private companies, but it's led by the government, they are trying to remove every safety critical guard off of every train. Every train. That's what they want to do. And we as a union will fight that all the way. We've now got Merseyrail out on strike. We've got Northern out on strike. We've got 2 more ballots coming in on Tuesday. And I'll make this promise to you, and I'll make this promise to the government. The RMT will have a quasi-national rail strike, just like 1911, all over again. It's not about money. We haven't asked for a penny. They've told us they're not going to make any of our members redundant, and then they say, so why are you doing it? I had a meeting with Chris Grayling, and opposite the table, Chris Grayling is saying, well, I don't know what the problem is. You know, we want people on trains. You won't get a Secretary of State for Transport who loves trains any more than me, he said. And so when I said back, Chris, that second person on the train, you don't want them safety trained. If there's a crash, I want them to be able to evacuate the train. So do I, said Chris. So do I. Everything they're doing, taking away their safety training, they cannot evacuate a train. Here's the Secretary of State for Transport, and he did not understand that. Who are they putting in charge? Who are they putting in charge? These people are massively out of their depth, even. So I say this, and it's a clear message, Chris Grayling. We're not going away, and we will continue through TUC after TUC, which is train operating company. Every one of them wants to come after our guards, we will ballot. And every single one of them, we will coordinate our action. It will be legal. They'll all have their own identity, but they will be legal, and we will coordinate, and we will stop the transport system in this country. And when we're talking about public sector, every single member of my union in that sector should be public sector workers, because transport should be run for the people and by the people. Whether you're a bus driver, a train driver, a guard, it's a right of everyone on this island, a right. You shouldn't be priced out of travelling. £300 to go from London to Scotland. Transport in this country should be run not for profit by the people of this country, and it should be a right, and we should all be able to travel around for the cheapest possible way. Now, I'll tell you something now. I see Steve's gone off now. A few years ago, I was at the TUC, where Steve Gillen moved a motion about general strike and a coordinated action. Bob Crow seconded it. And I think we got a little bus tour around the country to find out what people thought. And oh no, I'll move on to the strongly worded letter. Because I will say the TUC have progressed, because I hear they might write 2 strongly worded letters this year. And there's an old saying, I think Billy Bragg used to sing it a lot, which side are you on? And a message to Francis and the TUC. It's about time we asked you that question. We want the right answer. Which side are you on? Because we cannot come here year after year saying the same things. And as Mark said, we see no action. If the TUC won't lead it, then we're going to have to do it ourselves. And the progressive trade union movement in this country will do it ourselves. So I send that message to Francis. Which side are you on? You make your bloody mind up. Because I tell you, we're going to do it with or without you. So you line up with us or you line up against us. And I talk about against us now. The bin men of Birmingham there. Labour councillors attacking their own. Well, I send a message out to all Labour councillors around the country. Whether it's Tory austerity that they do with a smiley face, or it's apologetic Labour austerity. They don't hurt any less. And those councillors out there, if they don't know what colour their rosette is, then they need to leave. They need to leave now and piss off. And it comes back to, which side are you on again? It seems I'll be saying that a lot, because when you stand in politics, you make promises. And it seems to me it's quite easy to break them. Our members in Merseyrail, a wholly run Labour council. Wholly run Labour council. What are they doing? Removing every one of our guards off the trains. That's what they're doing. That's what they're doing in the name of austerity. So which side are they on? Which side are the Labour councillors in Birmingham on? Which side are the Labour councillors around the country on? We want a socialist-led Labour Party led by Jeremy Corbyn, but it's no good if all the councillors around the country are continuing to deliver Tory austerity. It's no good. So, I mean, well, 2 minutes. I can do that. Last year when I was here, I got in a bit of trouble. And someone said to me, be careful what you say this year. Because apparently last year I stood here and I said, any trade unionist with any sense would want to bring down this working class hating Tory government. I'll say it every bloody meeting if I need to. Because every trade unionist with any sense should want to bring down the working class hating Tory government. So, another message now. When we have our general strike, think of this. Every one of your members, every one of your family have to travel by rail at some point. Now, when I say we will not tolerate the safety critical second person on the train being removed, you should not tolerate that either. You shouldn't want your members to travel to and from work. I believe we can, this is the reason that every union can support this. Every union could stand side by side with the RMT when we march, and we say to the government, and we say to the private operators, fuck you, and fuck you. I didn't know I was going to say that. That's the problem with not writing speeches. But listen, you've got some great speakers. You've already had them. You've got more to come. We're going to have a great week at the TUC. I'm sure it won't be people that think they're important pissing up each other's backs again. I'm sure it's going to be progressive. I'm sure they're going to say what they mean when they say that they're going to fight for our movement. And if I'm going to the dinner on Monday, so people probably don't want to talk to me when I get there. Oh, I've only got 30 seconds left. Listen, solidarity from the RMT, and I'll send this. Austerity creates a lot of things. Austerity created Grenfell, and I'll leave you with that thought because the worst thing that's happened this year is we watched many people burnt to death in the name of austerity. That was cladding that was changed for cheaper cladding purely because that council were following the direction they were given about austerity. And who led austerity? The head of the government, Theresa May. So you are culpable. And I'll end with this message to Theresa May because of what happened at Grenfell. Theresa May, you are a murderer. That's what you are, Theresa May. Solidarity.
Thanks very much, Sean. And I think we all need to remember that the RMT, as well as being a fighting democratic union, we've had some horrific train disasters, Potters Bar, King's Cross, and so on. And we owe the RMT, as a travelling public, a real debt of thanks for the work they do in terms of continuing to try and ensure that we're safe. Colleagues, where's Richie? Come on, Richie. Let's have all your colleagues. Come on, let's have you all down here as well. I've lost quite a bit of my accent now because I moved 25 years ago to Paisley from Birmingham. But it's really great for me, on a personal level, to be able to welcome you all along here. I was walking along the front earlier, and I did hear some of you singing some Villa chants, which I was going to come out with an alternative one, but I decided to maybe let you get away with that one. But colleagues, we're really pleased that you're here today, and we've all been watching from afar your inspirational and difficult struggle against the council up there. And I know that Richie, your convener, has been at the forefront of supporting you and leading that way, and it's brilliant you're here, and invite you to address us. Thank you.
I'm not used to such a big audience, so I'll do my best. Firstly, I'd like to thank everyone for allowing me this opportunity to speak here today, and I'll just give you, well, the speech that I knocked up. So, on the coach this morning, I reviewed the pages of my speech, and it dawned on me whilst I was sat with my colleagues and listened to their banter that I shouldn't be boring you with the details, but emphasising on the spirit and the unity that's been created. The realisation by all that unless we come together and fight and stand for what we believe is right and fair, we will all suffer financial hardship. 113 of my members face imminent redundancy, and for what reason? To save £600,000, while Birmingham City Council squander £311,000 a week paying for an alternative workforce. Every 2 weeks of that equals 1 year's protection for my 113 members. So why does this council persist while they now hide behind the equal pay argument, which is a favourite tactic of the officer Stella Manzi to scare councillors into agreeing the cuts. There is no equal pay risk. There has never been one. Since we implemented this grading structure in 2011, but they persist with this because they have a plan, and their plan is to rob the wages from all of the low-grade workers in the council, all those working-class individuals who work hard day in, day out, providing essential services to the residents of Birmingham. The 113 Grade 3 leading hands are part of this group. They fulfil their safety-critical role. They are the eyes and the ears of the driver at the rear of the vehicle, and they cannot be replaced with CCTV, in which now one of the most dangerous occupations in the country. 2 years ago this November, Robert Bendadick was working at the rear of a vehicle when a car drove into him. Luckily, he escaped with only a broken leg, 3 broken ribs and a ruptured spleen, plus a 2-week stay in hospital. This isn't an isolated incident. David Ward has been working hard as a leading hand. He has a young family and has recently saved enough money to secure his first mortgage on a family home. Paul Jackson has been acting up leading hand for 3 years and 3 months. 4 weeks into industrial action, he received a letter from Birmingham City Council confirming and congratulating him on his Grade 3 status. Only 4 weeks later did he receive a redundancy notice.
Outrageous.
These are just two of the 113 who all share similar circumstances, of which their average age is between 45 and 55 years of age. They have been treated with nothing but utter contempt by this council. The 113 now face a choice of a derisory redundancy payment, an alternative Grade 3 post, most of them are fixed term, or to be downgraded at a later date, or to accept a lower grade post, resulting in a £3,500 to £5,000 pay cut. So their only real option is now to stand and fight. And fight we will. We are united in this cause, because we are not just colleagues, not just members, but we are family, shoulder to shoulder. Family standing shoulder to shoulder against the Labour Council imposing Tory austerity. I'd like to thank the entire Unite organisation for their support. Len McCluskey, Howard Beckett, officers, reps, legal team, and all the other groups and organisations, too many to mention, whether they've just gave messages of support, attended the picket lines, or donated to the Hardship Fund. This fund is vital for us. 40% of our workforce are agency staff on 0-hour contracts. Some of these individuals have worked with us side by side for up to 9 years. Most of them refusing to cross the picket line now, resulting in a 30% pay loss per week for them. But last but not least, my members. They have fulfilled a dream that I've long had, the dream of solidarity. And despite the circumstances, I've never been more proud to be a member, felt so privileged to be their rep, and so proud of them. I stand with you, my brothers, with passion and pride and conviction, and we will win this fight. We will take it all the way, because we hold the moral high ground. We deserve decent pay. My message to Birmingham City Council is this: enough is enough. My message to the Cabinet members is uphold the ACAS agreement, stand up to your officers. You are a Labour Council. Fulfil your mandate. Say no to austerity. Thank you.
Colleagues, well, Richie, if that was your first speech before this sort of audience, I'm sure it won't be your last. That was fantastic. Thank you. Thank you very much. I know that we will, during the course of the week, hear more about the struggle and how we can express solidarity, and I know that through the NSSN we will continue to offer that. And Rob has just informed me excuse me, that there will be a protest in support of the bin workers next Sunday outside Birmingham Council offices, and I'm sure that everyone will try and do all we can to make that a huge show of solidarity for those workers. So, colleagues, hopefully we will see you there next Sunday at that protest. Well done. Colleagues, from one inspiring group of workers taking action to another, it gives me great pleasure to ask up here Ronnie Draper, the General Secretary of the Bakers Union, along with Lewis, one of our fantastic young McDonald strikers. Thank you.
Do you want Lewis to go first? Yeah, you go first.
Thanks. So on Monday, me and my colleagues went on strike for the first time in McDonald's history in the UK. So since I've worked for McDonald's for 5 years, the conditions have always been terrible. The 0-hour contracts have been terrible. The bullying that all of my colleagues have faced day in, day out has always been terrible. So McDonald's left us with no other choice but to go on strike. And I think the support that we had from everyone on our picket line and outside Parliament, including politicians and other groups, was amazing. And just goes to show that we won't take this from corporate giants anymore, and we want fair working conditions for everyone throughout the UK. That's it.
Comrades, always a pleasure to come and speak to the NSSN conference and, to honour the great work that they do the rest of the year. I think it's fitting that we come and we pay our respects to the NSSN. Do you know what Lewis just did there and what the comrade from the Birmingham Bin man did is wonderful, because there's no history of ever doing public speaking before Monday, before they came out on strike. This is the first time, and to get up in front of, I don't know, 300-400 people, I think it's amazing. I've got to say, it's the end of, for us, it's the end of a historic week. I think that, fewer than 100 workers in McDonald's, because that's what we're talking about, fewer than 100 workers have probably changed trade union history for the future. That's how, magnificent it is in this country. If you think back to 1833, when the Tolpuddle martyrs took their action against an unscrupulous employer, well, it's no different now what these lads and lasses in McDonald's are doing in this country. They're fighting against an oppressive employer. And if you look at it, Lewis named a few things there. We're taking McDonald's for a criminal act against one of their managers. We've had one of their managers sacked. We've had another one suspended because of the bullying regime they've done. We took them to court in Europe, and we've won the case to make sure the contracts for employment are there and that they can't use exclusivity rules. But let me tell you, before I actually go into the main body of this, that tomorrow we've got some more of Lewis's comrades coming down from McDonald's who are going to come to the conference. And they don't know whether they're going to be able to come or not, because they don't know what their shift pattern is for tomorrow. For me, that's still exclusivity. That's still 0-hour contracts by another name, and that's what this company are doing. It's absolutely terrible. But what makes it even more historic is, they took on, these 100 people, they took on the second biggest employer in the world. The biggest exploiter of working people in the world, because that's exactly what McDonald's are. We deal with some of the worst employers, and I'll tell you, they look like princes and princesses compared to the stuff that McDonald's get away with. People working for £4.5p an hour. I had a thing 2 Saturdays ago, just before I flew out to Geneva to a World Conference. People ringing up, trolling and saying, you know, if they don't like being on the minimum wage, then they should go and get another job. Well, of course, we all know that's easier said than done. But many of these people aren't on the minimum wage because they're under 25 years of age. So they're on between £4.5p and £7.5p, with no guarantee of any hours. And we know what that means for the future. The dispute itself, I mean, McDonald's, well, it was only 0.11 of 1% of our people who were on strike. That is not the point. It was much, much bigger than that. There was 24 protests that went on around this country. Spontaneous action. I just want to tell you just a very short, funny story. I was in Geneva the week before, moving an emergency motion on McDonald's to the IUF World Conference. And I got a call. I was in the pub in the night time. I got a call off Tony Mulhern, and many of you will know. I don't know whether Tony's in the room or not, but Tony Mulhern, obviously a big activist within NSSN, and he phoned me and he said, Ronnie, he said, where's the strike in Liverpool on Monday? And I said, hang on, Tony, hang on. I'm in Geneva. It's going to cost you a bomb, this phone call. I said, I'll phone you back. And he went, no, you're all right, comrade, you're all right. Where's the strike on Monday? And I said, well, we haven't got one in Liverpool. It's Crayford, it's Cambridge. And he said, right. He said, we're going to put pickets outside some of the stores. And it was the Merseyside Pensioners Convention who did it. They went and stood in solidarity with the young comrades from McDonald's. But the comical part was, I thought I'd better ring Tony back and tell him what's happening. And I phoned him back and somebody else answered the phone. And I said, I've got this number. I spoke to Tony Mulhern earlier on. He went, yeah, he borrowed my phone. That's why Tony didn't care how much it was costing. I think this has been an advert of what can be, you know, what we can win as trade unions if we're prepared to do it. These young people and the older ones within McDonald's standing solidly together. And I'll tell you one thing, you know, Sean was saying about the Trade Union Act and, you know, all the anti-union stuff that we've faced over the years. Well, we've never really put up with it because pickets, I've never been on one of our pickets that has only got 6 people there, never. Outside Cambridge this week we had 60, outside Crayford we had 120, and then we did the rally in London, we had in excess of 200 people there. That's what it means. I mean, they're not going to lock us all up. There's not enough jails. You know, if you ask Steve Gillen, I don't know whether he's still here, but you ask Steve, they haven't got enough prisoners to lock, you know, 6.25 million trade unionists up. So we need to be making sure that we're standing side by side. Now, you know, I give a message of solidarity to you on the bin workers and the BA cabin staff as well. And we'll tell our members that they should go, and I've got some of our officers, I know in the room who didn't know they were, I've just spotted them now. We'll be telling them in Birmingham, because that's the area they're from, that you go and stand on their picket line. Go and give solidarity, show the same solidarity to these people as they show to the McDonald's workers this week. We've got to be their solidarity comrades with that. I want to just finish off by saying, you know, when Sean Hoyle talked about, you know, the feasibility of strike action, you know, we supported it. It got carried by the TUC, and that's where it died. Well, you know, it isn't just that, because how long ago, Rob, is it 4 years ago, that I moved the £10 an hour minimum wage. Yeah. I moved the abolition of 0-hour contract. And I would ask the TUC, what have they done about that? Because I'll tell you what, there's still millions of workers in this country who are nowhere near £10 and no prospect of being there. We need the TUC to act now. And I recall for what Sean was saying before, that we should be balloting for a strike, a general strike. You might not be able to get everyone to walk out just to support workers on the bin lodge, but I'll tell you what, they've got a beef, you've got a beef, McDonald's have got a beef, there'll be people who are having their pensions cut, they'll have a beef. Every single worker in this country will have a beef against their employer for some reason, except of course our officials. You know, we're good. Everyone will have a beef, and therefore we can take part in a general strike that is coordinated action. There's nothing illegal about it, nothing a government can do about it, and we should make sure that we press Francis O'Grady not just to call a rally in London because the day after everything goes back to normal. All we do is upset the traffic in London for a day. We need to do something that's going to upset the businesses who are exploiting our workers. We need something that is going to be a threat to government. And if it means bringing the government down, you know, all the better. All the better. Let's get them away. My final point is, because I know many of you are delegates, is that we're going to be moving a motion, I think, tomorrow morning, which is looking for protective legislation. I know it's going to be difficult with this government. If you think about, since they brought the living wage in, hundreds of thousands of workers in this country have actually lost money. So instead of being where they said before they were trying to cut away the reliance on benefits, there's more people now. Because what unscrupulous employers did was they took away overtime payments, they took away bank holiday payments, they took away Sunday premiums, and now people are living on the edge. So those people need protective legislation. We need this government to bring something in, and I know we should never rely on government, but what we should do is make sure that we pressurise them in the TUC. Comrades, I hope you all win your dispute. I know we're going to win our dispute. Solidarity is yours.
Thank you, Ronnie, and can we just say a big thanks to Louis, who's taking this action and helping his other young workers and has come along to speak today. Congratulations, well done. Colleagues, one of our unions in the movement who's been consistently campaigning against the effects of austerity, whether that's through attacks on conditions of workers or through some horrific privatisation campaigns and proposals, is the CWU. And it gives me great pleasure to invite Terry can come up and address us today. Terry's the Deputy General Secretary of the CWU. Welcome, Terry.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Thanks for the invitation. I'm sure people are starting to get a bit numb on their derrieres there, trying to listen to all the speakers. I'll tell you something. I've got to tell you something. I've had a couple of things this year that I can tick off my bucket list. One was I was invited and had the massive privilege of speaking at the Durham Miners Gala, where there was over 200,000 people there. Miners that are still in the spirit of fighting what they went up against the miners, and a crowd that showed you, I mean, they weren't there for me, Jeremy Corbyn was there, but it showed you the change that I believe is going on. And I'm sitting here listening to this meeting, and I tell you, I wish we could bottle the pride, the dignity, the self-respect and the fighting spirit of everybody in this room and take it out to every worker in this country, because I think we'd change it next week if we could do that. And that is the lesson that we've got to do in taking our arguments once again to a generation maybe that haven't been used to fighting trade unions. They're ready for it now, and we've got to get that message across. Terry Pullinge is my name. I'm the Deputy General Secretary Postal of the Communication Workers Union. And as we speak, 110,000 of our members are being balloted to take industrial action against what's happening to this magnificent public service, Royal Mail. And I absolutely believe, forget about the legislation, we're not working on that. We believe we will deliver far beyond the 50% threshold, and we will have a massive yes vote, and we will rock these people. Because I believe what goes round comes around. We are sort of eternal fighters in this room. We've been at it, a lot of us, for so many years. We're also eternal optimists. And I do believe things come back round again. And I think what we're seeing now is a spirit of this. This is my simple analysis for anyone who cares to listen. When workers came back from the Second World War, they said we're not coming back to the same sort of treatment we got from workers in this country. As a consequence of that, you had the William Beveridge report on the pillars of security that ordinary, decent working people needed. You also saw the Attlee government elected when everyone thought that Winston Churchill would win that election. And that Attlee government started bringing the changes, the nationalisation, the health service, benefits people get when they're not in work, our benefits society in this country, the welfare state. And it's coming again, you can feel it, because ever since then, I believe the establishment knew that the mood was so strong, they had to swallow some of that. But ever since, they've been trying to unravel it, and we've gone through the journey of our lives. They've been gradually dismantling again the things that ordinary working people get. And I think now the time is absolutely right for us to emerge again. And when you see things like, listen, all of us, you know, we have struggles, we have strikes, we support each other, and it's tremendous whenever you see it. But seeing the McDonald's workers must tell everybody that things are changing in this country. But what this new generation needs to see, everyone needs to reflect. Trade union leaders need to reflect. Politicians need to reflect and understand that we've got to change things. But in order to get that generation to come on board, and people say, you know, the density of trade union movement has gone down. Most of that is due to the appalling way people are being employed, by the way, and they've tried to split up collectivism in this country. But if the way to inspire the nation, and a nation of ordinary working people, and give them hope, is to them to see us taking action and putting action behind the words that we just say at the top table. So our postal services, 3 years into privatisation, they've had all the hanging fruit, and the security and agreements we've had, the standard of living, the pension security for our people, and of course their employment security, they're all now being threatened. But they're also threatening this great public service as well. All of it for what? To stuff their mouths with gold of shareholders and the chief executive. The chief executive of Royal Mail, who's had the equivalent of a 23% pay rise, lectures our members that they're overpaid. Most of our members' basic pay is just over 20 odd grand a year. I think it's 51 pence more than the £10 living wage we're saying people need. And they're telling us we're overpaid. And in a business that's met its efficiency targets, made its profit, has increased its dividends year on year as shareholders, are telling our members all that's on offer this year for a pay rise is £370 lump sum. It's an absolute disgrace. And at the same time, they are dismantling this public service which Labour has promised to renationalise. We, our union, recognise we've got to fight not just to protect our members, to protect that national service for everyone. We deliver to over 30 million addresses in this country 6 days a week at a uniform price. You couldn't have anything more socialist than that. Don't matter whether you're a doctor or you're one of our bin men. It doesn't matter whether you live in a prefab or you live in a mansion. Everyone gets the same service from Royal Mail, don't matter where you live in this country, even the furthest reaches. We're still the only company in this country, the only service that connects everybody. Even the internet and broadband don't get to everyone in this country. We do. Postal workers, 6 days a week at a uniform price if you want it. It's one of the great inventions of our social history. It's over 500 years old. It is absolutely still relevant. And I tell you now, I know the postal workers. I'm a postman myself, and we will stand up and fight. You watch and see. We support you. You support us. And we will try and help this shift in the mood in this country to bring in people back, working class politics, and people represented by proper trade unions that fight for them and fight for everything they deserve. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, Terry. Thanks for being here and bringing that on support of the CWU, and look forward to working both in my union with the NSN on those campaigns as we go forward. Colleagues, another union that's at the forefront of campaigning and dealing with the horrid issues of 0 hours contracts, low pay and fighting against job insecurity is USDOR. And I'm really glad that Amy Murphy, who's a Tesco worker and is a member of the EC of USDOR for this region, is able to talk to us today. Welcome, Amy.
Well, good afternoon, comrades, and thank you for having me here. Normally I'm out there where you are, listening to speeches, getting all excited and fired up. However, today, here I am following some truly amazing speakers, addressing you in a personal capacity to highlight the issues my members in retail are facing, and if I'm honest, it is a bit daunting and a bit overwhelming, so please bear with me. First of all, I would like to send a message of support and solidarity to the brave workers from McDonald's, who this week made history by standing up for workers' rights by leading the first ever strike at McDonald's in the UK. Their demands were to end zero-hour contracts by the end of the year, gain union recognition and a £10 per hour minimum wage. Nothing for where I'm standing that is not fair, just and truly deserved. Retail was traditionally a sector that offered family-friendly working hours. However, the highly competitive nature of the market means that employers are now expecting their workers to fit around customer demand, often resulting in workers working unsocial and unpredictable hours. Flexible contracts are now used widely in retail, particularly for newer staff. The theory, apparently, behind this is they suit people who choose to work certain hours to fit in with other responsibilities, often caring responsibilities or second jobs. In reality, however, many cases, flexibility is tilted in the direction of the employer, with staff increasingly put under pressure to up their availability and having little say over their working hours. The needs of the business dictate workers' hours, their hours changing on a week-by-week basis, often with very short notice, making it almost impossible to plan their home life due to the uncertainty of their shifts, especially if they have a second job to help pay the bills. And having gone through all this, they are still expected to wear a smile. There are 4 major retailers within the UK, the Co-op, Morrisons, Tesco's and Sainsbury's. As I've already said, retail is a very competitive market. And if one of the big 4 initiates something, you can pretty much guarantee that the others will follow, a bit like the domino effect. So let's look at some of the changes that have taken place within Tesco over the last 3 years and is still ongoing. Sale of several businesses within the UK, including Dobbies, Giraffe, Harrison Hall, Tesco Opticians and photo shops. The result on our members? Job losses. Closure of around 60 unprofitable stores. Result on our members? Job losses. Move from night to day replenishment in 195 stores. Result on our members? Job losses. Stepping back from 24-hour opening in over 80 stores. Result on our members? Job losses. Introduction of new management structures. Result on our members? Job losses. Closure of call centre in Cardiff. Result on our members? Job losses. Closure of former head office in Cheshunt. Result on our members? Job losses. Closure of 2 distribution sites. Result on our members? Job losses. And it doesn't end there. As I speak, colleague room staff and head office staff in Welwyn Garden City are in consultation. The result? More job losses. On top of this, retail workers' terms and conditions are under constant attack. Premiums are being eroded away year on year in pay deals where the companies would say the money that is saved is reinvested. I think you and I would call it self-financing. At this point, I would just like to speak a little about the Tesco strike in Ireland, where 15 stores in Ireland took strike action on Valentine's Day after members of the trade union mandate, which represents 10,000 workers in Tesco's, voted 78% in favour of a walkout over contract changes. The changes Tesco's Ireland were attempted to force through without agreement affected approximately 250 workers employed before 1996. 1 year before this, 900 workers lost their jobs to redundancy. I applaud the Tesco workers in Ireland for making their stand. There must be an end to these attacks on terms and conditions. Workers should not pay the price for the mistakes made at the top. Once again, solidarity to every worker in whatever industry they find themselves in a strike situation. And we all need to send a very clear message to every employer, including the government. Your staff are your greatest asset. It should always be people and safety before profit, never the other way round. So comrades, in summary, it's time for a £10 an hour basic wage, an end to zero-hour contracts, an end to a tax on premiums, more full-time contracts, better work-life balance. Whether we work in the private or the public sector, we are all in it together. We need to unite to put an end to austerity. We all need a pay rise without caveats, a real living wage. We need a government for the people. We need to take back control of our public services, our transport, our NHS. We need to do whatever it takes, each and every one of us, to get a Labour government back in power. A Labour government with Jeremy Corbyn at the helm. A leader of the people, a leader to be proud of. United we can do it. He has given us the hope. We must take that forward. Just before I finish, I would like to commend and congratulate Unison on their historic victory in the Supreme Court, resulting in the abolition of the tribunal fees brought in by this vicious, callous Tory government. Their hard work is going to make such a difference to our members in the workplace, denied access to justice and the right to challenge unscrupulous employers. Unison's determination to pursue this to the end just goes to prove the trade union movement can and does make a huge difference and is more relevant today more than ever. Stay strong, comrades, in solidarity. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. And we're now going to hear from another union rep involved in disputes, and this time the British Airways Mixed Fleet cabin crew dispute. And so, Sim, would you like to come up? I have a friend who's a cabin crew, and I know that, contrary to the image that's sometimes portrayed of it being a glamorous, exotic job, it's actually really, really difficult. And some of the things they have to deal with, I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. So I'm sure you're going to tell us all about it, and we'll clearly take forward our solidarity. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the warm welcome as well. Actually, some of the things that we deal with on the aircraft I couldn't actually tell you about, but maybe in the pub later on or the cab or whatever, we'll do that. Came down on the train with Gaz, another comrade, and we had a good laugh about that on the train. But I'm afraid to say the strike at British Airways isn't actually a laughing matter. But before I start, I'd really like to thank the National Shop Stewards Network and Rob as well. Rob's been at many of our pickets, and it's been great to be part of the network. I mean, when you go on strike, it's quite an isolating and emotional experience, and that's one of the fantastic reasons to hear other people's stories and their struggles with the emotion. I mean, basically, I want to talk to you today about equality. And I want to talk to you about equality because as trade unionists and socialists, equality goes through everything we do. We've improved so much in society. When we increase pay for the low paid, this improves society for everyone, and we've really been central to a lot of increased human rights for everybody in this country. So to put my discussion on equality into perspective, I'd like to tell you a few things about the British Airways strike. Some of the statistics are a little grim, I'm afraid. So we've taken 85 days of industrial action this year since January. The reason we took industrial action is our cabin crew get a basic salary of £12,192. That's less than the minimum wage. While we're at work, we get an additional payment of £3 an hour, which British Airways says brings us above the minimum wage level. This £3 an hour is a payment for food and beverage for when we're in hotels, some of which we cannot leave due to security risks. So our members voted to reject a pay offer of a 2% pay increase, which would have equated to 6 pence an hour. We rejected that deal last year, 2016. In 2016, British Airways made a profit of £1.47 billion. They ended that year with cash reserves of £2.5 billion, and their executives had a pay increase of 18%. So we've taken 85 days of industrial action this year. There's been a lot of different elements to our strike. One of the lowest elements is the fact that during the summer, British Airways used Qatar Airways. To get a job for Qatar Airways, for first instance, you will not get a job if you have hepatitis C or you're HIV positive. You have an STD test before you get your visa. If you do get a job for them, you have to be in your hotel compound between 4 and 7 a.m. every night, even if you're on a day off. You have to gain permission to get married, and you used to get automatically fired if you were pregnant. This was changed after the ILO did an investigation into this. So these are the people that British Airways used to undermine our strike action. Qatar Airways own 20% of British Airways. Qatar Airways action was rubber stamped by Chris Grayling, who we've heard about earlier. He spent 14 months prevaricating over whether Southern Rail was to blame for the Southern strike, and that was pushed by a lot of commuters coming from Brighton to London. So Chris Grayling and rubber-stamped Qatar Airways. There wasn't a proper consultation period for this. So throughout our strike for July and August, we could see Qatar Airways jets flying overhead. I did say I wanted to discuss equality. So as trade unionists and socialists and our members who go out on strike action, which is a legal, lawful thing to do, it's a simple exchange. We go on strike, you should have pay deducted for that day's labour. Absolutely, no disagreement with that. However, during the British Airways strike, there's been a concerted campaign of bullying, harassment and victimisation. I can give you some facts around this. In January, British Airways emailed all cabin crew in our fleet and said, if you are not a member of any trade union, you can accept the corporate pay offer. That's the pay offer our members rejected. This means that at the moment, if you're not a member of any trade union, you get paid £555 a year and 14 pence an hour more. By next March, this will rise to 7%. In other words, if you are not a member of any trade union, you will earn 7% more. To accept this, you had to sign a declaration, as I repeat, stating you are not a member of any trade union. In addition, at the end of August, colleagues who did not strike were paid a payment of £250 each, which British Airways admitted was a saving from the bonuses they confiscated from strikers. We received, as strikers, numerous emails and letters to our house. Some of these emails warned of personal consequences. We wore the yellow pen at work, as if you discuss the strike on the aircraft and a non-striker doesn't like it, they can report you for bullying and harassment, the consequences of which can be suspension or further disciplinary. So now that we've gone to work, we've had a pause for peace, talks begin on Tuesday, British Airways have moved to ban yellow pens. I know, guys, that this sounds pretty grim, but I just needed to give you the facts, because as I said, I want to discuss equality. The similar thread that's going through all of the industrial action that we've seen recently is bullying, harassment and victimisation. It's time for an amendment in the Equality Act. We need the clear, absolute protection of an amendment in the Equality Act and include trade unionism and all that comes with it as the 10th protected characteristic. I'd like you all to gain evidence. We're happy that Labour, in their manifesto, are going to start a public inquiry into blacklisting, but we do need this protection. After all, as members who are going on strike, we're doing it to benefit the wider community. This shouldn't be a problem for us. Equality's in a lot of our constitutions. Let's do it. And I would ask anyone that's having industrial action, start a file and mark it Amendment for the Equality Act. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that contribution. I'd now like to invite Len. Was Len Hockney up here? Len is the Unite Branch Secretary that's involved in leading the Barts NHS Trust strike. You're very welcome to address us. Thank you.
Thanks, Janice, and I'd like to say thanks everyone who has sent in messages of support and money throughout the recent period for our struggle. And if I haven't got back to you, it's because I'm in that privileged position of being overwhelmed by the support for what is the biggest strike of ancillary workers outside of a national dispute in our NHS. And I think in common with the themes expressed from this rostrum today, precarious working, bullying and particularly low pay, workers in the NHS have seen a cut in their real income of in excess of 14% over the last 7 years. And it was this time last year that my branch intervened into Barts Trust AGM, the biggest acute trust in the country, to highlight and call them out for the disgraceful actions of previous employers under their watch, under their 5 hospitals, where workers had done vital jobs such as portering and domestic works, integral links in the chain of care delivered to every patient that came in to our hospital, and workers exploited on rates of pay as low as £7.20 an hour, working for 6, 7, 8 years, alongside those of us on contracts, disrespected, daily coming into work with that insecurity over their heads. The Trust said then, we didn't know that this was happening and we will seek to try and address it. At that point, they were about to award a £600 million contract to an organisation called Serco, a 10-year contract which would see 1,250 workers transferring over across the 5 hospitals on a phased basis. Well, Unite, our union, launched a campaign to grow its membership, to reach out to these workers, to lift up from the dirt, to give them a perspective that our movement can reach out, move them and win them to the trade union banner, and it doesn't have to be this way. We did that. We recruited hundreds of workers. We grew our activist base and we got ourselves in a position where we put in a claim for a modest 30 pence an hour increase, or 3% increase in our basic pay. We've had 24 days of strike action so far. Workers from the African subcontinent, overwhelmingly female workers, have participated for the first time in their lives in industrial action. Workers which didn't even know what a trade union was in many respects before we reached out and won them to our banner. Workers who send home money to keep families alive in countries like Ghana and Nigeria. I had a conversation on the picket line with one worker who told me how hard it was for him to sacrifice and be part of the movement. He said he out of his annual salary, out of his monthly wage, he sends home £600 a month to Mauritius to keep his mother's dialysis going and essentially to keep her alive. Despite all these obstacles, despite all these problems, over 400 workers have participated in action since the 4th of July. And we're currently on suspension pending talks. But wherever our dispute ends up, however it is resolved, already we have achieved an increase from those rates of £7.20, £7.50 an hour up to £9.75. We have some precarious workers put into permanent positions, and we have had an imposition of a 1% increase so far. All these things have only happened on the basis of action, campaigning and strike action. And I think it's an example and it's an inspiration. And also a mention has been made about the Mixed Fleet and the Bank of England, because we went down to the Serco shareholder meeting there a few weeks ago, and we joined up with the Mixed Fleet workers and the Bank of England workers, and we had a big protest, a lively protest outside JP Morgan Stanley. From then we marched to the Civil Aviation Authority, And from then, it was the longest walk I've ever had, I can tell you. From then, a couple of us peeled off, older workers, but from then we went on to the Bank of England, arrived there. I thought that was the end of it, but we marched around the Bank of England while the governor was giving his latest statement. But truly, an inspirational day, a day in which workers in 3 different disputes came together in the South East and the London and South East region. And I would say, if we can do that as activists in a region, in one union of the country, what can we do? And can we not achieve that with 6 million workers and their families throughout the length and breadth of this country? Comrades, it's been an excellent rally, and I'll just finish on this point. Honoran Bevan said, "The NHS will prevail for as long as there are folks left with the faith to fight for it." 400 workers in my union have demonstrated that. You have demonstrated the need, and we have gained national traction in this dispute and a national platform in the media. Let this conference, this coming week of the TUC, draw the right conclusion, the only conclusion, that NHS, the austerity agenda is a busted flush, the government are weak. Let's take them on, let's join up the struggles and solidarity, and let's forward to victory. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. And thank you for the strikers who've come along, and I'm sure that they'll get the continued support of the NSSN in solidarity. Thank you. Colleagues, on the 14th of September, there's going to be a protest in London over safety and buses. And Mo is going to tell us a bit more about that. Welcome, Mo.
Afternoon, sisters and brothers. I am a bus driver in Unite. I'm a branch secretary. I've been organising for quite a while. I'm a young worker, and I just want to say a solidarity with McDonald strikers. I used to work in McDonald's as well, and actually every morning I remember working. It was one of my first jobs, working in McDonald's. I've still got scars on my hand when I first worked at McDonald's. It was actually my first day that I burnt my hand. The first day when I worked at McDonald's. They just told me, go in the kitchen, flip some burgers. That's how it was. And that's how bad it is. So I feel your pain. I feel the struggle. Solidarity with the McDonald's strikers. I wish I could join the picket line recently, but I was working, unfortunately. But yeah, I want to start off by saying recently we had a London Assembly report called Driven for Distraction. This report, it had vital information, evidence is submitted by bus drivers, the precarious working conditions that we face. Our working conditions, I don't know if anybody knows, it's quite damaging to our health, and it's actually damaging to the public. We've had 25 people dead, bus-related, and 12,000 injuries. This was as a result of the cuts since privatisation in the buses. We're facing an enormous amount of struggle driving a bus. We would love to do our job as professional as we can, but the thing is, they keep telling us to carry on. They keep telling us to carry on regardless. The things that we go on, I can't say much information over here, but the things that happens to a bus driver in the cab, the amount of radio messages that we get bombarded with, telling us to carry on and meet the mileage. We come back to our employers and tell them what's going on. Nothing happens. And that's what's going on. We arranged a demonstration because we're going to hand over some Bill of Rights to the Mayor and TfL. The reports, what's the report said? They said that there's going to implement, give the recommendations to TfL and the Mayor to implement, such as put toilet facilities at each bus ends, which we don't have at the moment. But I don't understand how that's going to work if the Tory government have imposed £700 million of cuts to Transport for London and its subsidiary companies. So, and outsourced cleaners as well in the buses. I don't understand how they can do it. So that's why it's important that we have this demonstration to show our presence as bus workers. We're also working with the public. We've had a lot of support from cyclists, Stop Killing Cyclists campaigners. Last Monday we attended a vigil as bus workers in solidarity with a fella whose name is Ardian Zagani, who passed away unfortunately. But Stop Killing Cyclists is campaigners of cyclists. They were really happy that we came forward, and they will be coming forward to our demonstration at City Hall to show that we are linking up with the public. We also want to link up with every transport union out there, such as ASLEF and RMT, and take on the government together. And I think there's a big opportunity for trade union movement to come together with transport workers, and maybe we can take action, strike action, possibly bus workers and RMT, tube workers, and ASLEF train drivers together to show that safety is a problem, where austerity is, where there's so much cuts, that public suffer. Public always suffer. We really care about the public, but we need to stand up as a movement together. I hope to see everyone at the demonstration. If you can, come along. If you can't, please tell everybody to come outside City Hall. It's Thursday at 9:30 in the morning.
Thank you. Thank you. And if we get details, I'm sure that'll be circulated through the NSSN and obviously through any unions that we can pass it on to, and make sure that that's a big event. Colleagues, we're now going to hear from Sean. Sean's a Unite executive member. Welcome, Sean.
Thank you. A bit like closing the act there. I think Jimi Hendrix.
Just 1 second, Sean. I'm going to give you this one.
It's a bit like austerity. To say I'm closing down this one, remember I'm also closing down the TUC. It's the last motion. I feel a bit like Jimi Hendrix at Woodstock, but I probably won't give as good a performance. I'm not really sure where to start with austerity, because as a disabled person, and my comrades out there, other disabled comrades out there, we've had so much rained upon us by this vicious government and the predecessor, the condemns, as they were condemned to be known as. Almost from day one, we had a situation where Michael Howard, the guy that had something on the night about him, turned around and said that disabled people on benefits were a weight on the country's economy. Straight away, that gave this coalition government almost a green light to attack us. They've been attacking us ever since then in a myriad of ways, which would make your hair curl, if not you burst out in tears. The work capability assessment, for instance, here we have an assessment which almost from day one was flawed. It's become fatally flawed, literally, in that thousands, if not scores of thousands of people who have come away from that benefit have been told, nope, you do not, the benefit is not for you, you're fit to work. And we have people, all forms of disability, taking their own lives. They just see a bleak future ahead of them. The government has done very little to change that in these years. They've introduced a new payment for disabled people called the Personal Independence Payment. And again, this is failing thousands and thousands of disabled people, people who were on disability living allowance, who were on lifetime awards, are now going in front of a PIP assessment to be told, actually, you don't qualify. They're spending something like almost 600 million on the assessments, and while they're doing that, the proportion of assessments they're getting wrong, and it's not just the assessors getting it wrong, it's the DWP. As they go to appeal, there's such a high percentage of cases that win. Now, if you brought a builder in and they made a balls up of the building, you'd have penalty clauses attached. But companies like Atos and Maximus, they're getting away with it because they're getting the nod from the government. So that's the benefits side of things. So then you've got social care and support. And once again, there's been massive, massive cuts in this area for disabled people. They took away the independent living fund from just under 20,000 people. Actually, what happened there was the money was reinstated till 2020, but local councils because it wasn't ring-fenced, local councils are spending it elsewhere. You're getting situations where people have 20, 30, 40-hour-a-week care packages cut down to an hour a day, hour and a half a day. Someone will come in the morning, they'll help them with the toileting, bathing, wash, dressing. They'll sit them in a chair and say there's 3 cups of water and a sandwich. I mean, talking about social isolation and social exclusion, you know, and those with care packages which are too expensive, according to the council, they are then put in residential homes. It's basically, sorry, words escape me on this. Then we get to the care workers themselves. A group of people, they are care workers, they're personal assistants, support workers, totally undervalued by this government. You have a situation where someone gets paid 6 hours for a day and having worked 10 or 11 hours because they're going from client to client, 45 minutes here, 20 minutes here, an hour here. So they start at 6 in the morning and they're going through 8 in the evening, 9 in the evening, only getting paid 5 or 6 hours at times. Again, a totally undervalued group of workers out there, and we should be supporting them wherever. But I suppose on the bright side of things, I don't think it was lost. We have fought back. Before 2010, disabled people were quite silent. We were in the shadows. A group of people called Disabled People Against the Cuts decided enough's enough. And I'm a member, there's probably people in here, I'm sure, who are members, and you've seen what's happened with that group. They've spearheaded the disability movement over the last 7 years, along with trade unionists. I have to say, these trade unionists have helped all the way along the line, assisted, we give resources. And I'd like to say to you today, all of you, if you don't belong to your local DPAC group, get in touch with them, talk to them. What we do is we'll go out on picket lines. And we'd like that to be reciprocated as well. We are going to carry the fight to the government. Atos, this disgraceful organisation of so-called health workers, basically chucked the contract in a couple of years ago. The name, if you put Atos onto your search engine, what will come up was Atos kills. And that's what it became a poisonous brand. They gave up the contract because they couldn't continue any longer. They're a global organisation. So once again, I say solidarity to disabled people. Disabled people at work may not be able to come out and strike, but they'll certainly come out in solidarity with strikers. So once again, solidarity to all those workers at the moment in struggle, and solidarity to disabled people who are also in struggle. Thank you, comrades.
Thank you, Sean. And I know my own union, PCS, has got a really good relationship with DPAC and works very closely with them on the welfare reform and defending social security. So thanks for coming along and making the meeting aware of some of those issues today. Colleagues, we've got 2 more speakers before we close the rally. And we're now going to hear from Linda Toth. Linda is a former executive member of the NUT, and she's currently the secretary of the NSSN. Linda.
Well, it's been quite a long meeting, so I won't take up much time. I'd just like to say that walking into this rally this afternoon, with every seat taken and standing room for all the strikers, it really struck a chord. Because the NSSN has been going for many years now, and year by year we've been building up a fantastic support in the trade union movement and from ordinary workers in struggle. It's been mentioned that the NSSN was set up by the RMT and Bob Crow. I'm not quite sure if Bob had any ideas of where this was going, but the remit was to assist to help strengthen the trade unions from the bottom up. And I think that's what we've been doing year after year, really going out and supporting people in action everywhere and anywhere. The NSSN banner has been seen all over the place on picket lines. But not just that, we've been helping to put pressure on the leadership of the trade union movement to embrace those struggles properly and to take them forward. We've been plugging away quite a long time, so the compliments we've received today from some of the most militant leaders in the trade union movement and the things that have been said about the work that we've been doing, I think is very gratifying for everybody here. But I think there's still a job to do. The TUC down the road, I mean, who knows about the TUC? Passing the building with the big sign outside, changing the world of work for the good. I mean, you know, what about £10 an hour minimum wage? What about end to 0 hour contracts? So I'm sure this week there'll be plenty of motions, good motions passed, but I will just repeat what others have said, that we hope that those motions actually lead to action. So our work is not finished. What we need is, you know, is more action at the top, but that will come from pressure from below. Now, the NSSN is active. In just getting this rally together today has cost more than £800, which of course we need to raise from the trade union movement. Now, we will have buckets on the way out, but on every seat you will find one of these affiliation letters. Now, it's really important that if you're in a trade union branch, which I assume most of you are here, that you make sure that your union branch affiliates to the NSSN. I mean, we say in the letter £50, but we will accept a lot more. And of course, if you can't make the £50, we will accept less, but it is important. And if you do it 1 year, don't forget to do it the next year, and the year after that, and the year after that. We need as much money as we can possibly get. And also, we're not averse to people who perhaps are not active in their trade union, or their trade unions don't meet very often, to people taking out a little subscription, a standing order. I mean, there are many people who have decided that they'll spend £1 a month, £2 a month, £5 a month to go to the NSSN. And I think that would be, the details are on the letter, so all you've got to do is set up a standing order. And I think we've certainly got the ideas how to take the workers' struggle forward, but we do need the means to get there. So after having a great rally, the next thing is to have a great income from the movement. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Linda, and if I can reinforce that and ask everyone to try and dig deep and contribute so that it can meet those costs and carry on with the excellent work of the meeting. Colleagues, we've got one more speaker left before we close the meeting. I'm going to now hand over the chair to Rob, because I'm a delegation leader in the TUC and I need to go down and do some things before the Congress starts. But can I just say personally, thank you for all the support you've given this meeting today. I've really enjoyed chairing it. It's a fantastic experience, and I'll see many of you in the Congress Hall during the week. Thank you.
Big round of applause for Janice. I'd like to thank Janice for chairing the meeting today. She's a pretty experienced chair. All the Villa fans have gone now. Hugo is going to come up here and he's going to close the rally. Hugo is speaking in a personal capacity, as was Amy, for us though. Hugo Pierre is a National Executive Council member of Unison. He's also a convener in Camden Council. And like I say, Hugo's just going to say a few words to end the meeting. And then, at the end of the meeting, we're going to go down and lobby some of the delegates as they go in. So when you go out, we're going to stroll down together to the hall. So, Hugo.
Yeah. Well, thanks very much, Rob, for inviting me to give a summary of this meeting. I think there are two messages that come out of this meeting. And the first one, obviously, is that solidarity works. And I think that the work that the National Shop Stewards Network has been able to do in terms of making sure that disputes that have been recognised here and gaining that solidarity for them and encouraging those workers who are involved in those disputes to continue on until they win has been a very, very important feature of the work. Already we've heard about the success of the Glasgow janitors, fellow Unison members, and also the Bank of England workers, but also the solidarity that have been given to the BA Mixed Fleet, to the Birmingham Bins and the Barts Health Trust. I know, for example, Barts Health Trust is very personal to me. It's where I was born within that trust. My children were born within that trust. And the work that those workers do is absolutely essential to ensuring that there is a good health service in that particular area. And to see the workers on strike on the picket lines, and I've been down to every single day of their picket line so far, the solidarity on those particular picket lines is absolute, and the infectious nature of their dispute is absolutely wonderful to see first thing in the morning, at least by the time I get there anyway, onto their picket lines. So it's really wonderful, and we need to make sure that that solidarity is spread around. And in particular around the Birmingham bin dispute, we have to look at the role of those Labour councillors. What are they playing at? How can it be that those people can be allowed to retain their office as Labour councillors when we know in the past councillors such as those in Liverpool who stood up for the working class of their area were victimised and expelled from the Labour Party for standing up there? It cannot be right that those Birmingham councillors are allowed to stay in the party and inflict the damage that they're doing on those bin workers. We've got to make sure that we reinforce our solidarity for them and make sure that also within the Labour Party it's taken up and not just left as it is. And again, that solidarity to the RMT, who, as we know, have initiated this particular network. But I think the bigger message that we need to get across from today's rally is about austerity, fighting austerity and scrapping the cap, the 1% pay cap that's been inflicted on my members as public sector workers, on myself, my members in Unison, and other workers in the public sector as well. We know, because they've been on the radio almost every morning since they when the Tories were inflicted with what really was a defeat for them after the general election. Every morning since then, they've had ministers on the radio saying, well, we may look at perhaps an extra pay rise for nurses because we're finding it hard to recruit nurses. We may look at an extra increase for doctors. We may look at an extra increase for teachers, another hard to recruit area. Well, we have to say that's not enough. That's just going to sow division in our movement. Those teachers rely on teaching assistants in the classroom. They rely on cleaners to clean their classroom. They rely on school meals workers to cook the meals to make sure that children can get a decent education, decent meal, and stay attentive to the education that they receive throughout the day. We know that those things are just as important as having a teacher in front of a class. We know that in the health sector, just as important as doctors and nurses are, that porters, domestic workers, social carers are all essential to delivering that health care. We know that because that solidarity that we have in the workplace, we know that we don't want one group of workers to lose out to another. And the TUC have to work out how they organise that solidarity and bring all of those different groups of workers. And we want to go back to the spirit of 2011. Who remembers 750,000 workers on the streets of London marching against austerity? That brought together the whole of the trade union movement. The TUC organised that, and they can do that again and give our movement the confidence to go forward. Because by the end of that year, there were 2 million public sector workers on strike. 2 million workers had coordinated their claims around pensions and taken strike action. And exactly the same thing could be done now. Not just the smaller unions. I think it's excellent what the PCS have decided that they're going to do. What about my union, Unison? We need to make sure that we start that battle as well to win over our members to strike action, to give that lead to our members to take that strike action, start doing the work to make sure that we get over the trade union ballots that are here. And I'll finish on that note. If we act together, we can win. Things are different now from when they were in 2011. We've been through a general election where the beginnings, the renewal of socialist ideas in our movement have started to be been put forward in the manifesto that was laid before the people in that general election by Jeremy Corbyn and John McDonnell. That will give people aspirations and hopes that we can have a better world and that our action can gain confidence from that, feed into that manifesto and push both our movement forward and also hopefully an agenda for socialism in the future. Thank you very much.